Roguelikes as a genre seem to be more popular now than ever before, and with so many of them on the market, sometimes you can easily miss something that's absolutely amazing. I spent a whole bunch of money last year on many different types of games, and some of them I felt fell off very fast, and I didn't even complete all of them. Some of these are AAA titles like Starfield, which I really felt fell short and didn't hit the mark. But sometimes you have to look past graphics and just judge a game by how enjoyable it is to play and how good it is overall. Now, the game I'm going to be talking about today is called Slay The Spire. I'm sure a lot of people will have heard of it, but if you're like me, it may have completely gone underneath your radar and you didn't even know it existed. In fact, it's quite far from the normal type of game I play. I mostly play the latest releases, and usually they have some pretty decent or up-to-date graphics. However, even though Slay The Spire has what I would say are quite retro graphics, the art style just fits perfectly for this game, and the game itself reminds me of Dungeons and Dragons, when there's an element of luck and randomness to each run. Now, if you have never played Slay The Spire, it's a roguelike deck building game where you pick your character and try to make your way up a tower, or spire as the name would suggest, becoming more powerful as you go. When you first play the game, you will only have one class unlocked, and that's going to be the Ironclad, kind of your warrior class and one of, if not the easiest class to get to grips with. So you'll set out on your journey and make decisions on what paths to take in order to make your way through each act, making choices along the way. This sounds simple enough, but the cool thing about it is that each run will almost always be very different to the next, as each time you play, the maps are randomly generated and you need to work out the best path to take in order to get to the end boss and be strong enough to take them down. In order to do that, you'll walk a fine line, as you'll be able to choose from taking on normal enemies or elites, which are generally much more challenging but will reward you with a relic once you've defeated them. These almost always provide permanent buffs to your character and sometimes can be quite powerful and even game changing, and as such will really help you to progress, especially as they start stacking up. Random encounters that can reward you with certain items like relics or cards or even potions, as well as of course a whole bunch of other items. These random encounters, however, will often also have a certain trade-off, where you lose health, max health, or of course you could gain a card that curses you, affecting your character negatively throughout the entire run. As you journey along, you're also going to find shops which are great for hand-picking cards or relics that you definitely want on your character, and campfires which you'll need to decide if you want to rest in order to recoup some of your health, or use them to upgrade some of your cards to make you more powerful again. Honestly, I probably overlooked this game because of the graphics, but everything in it just works, and it works very well at that. The first run I did saw my Ironclad making his way steadily through the tower as I got to grips with the controls and tried to figure out the combat. I quickly realised that the game could be quite punishing even early on, and you had to make sure that you blocked and negated some enemy damage whenever they were about to hit you on their turn, or your character would pretty much fall over fast, ending your entire run. I kept making my way through until I reached the first boss of Act 1. Now, these bosses are randomised, so sometimes you may be in for a tougher challenge than others. This time I was against the Guardian, and after a pretty hard fought fight, I managed to dwindle down their health and eventually take them down. Now, when you beat the last boss of each stage, you're rewarded with a legendary card choice, which are very strong. Alongside this, you also get to pick a boss relic, and these can be some of the most powerful items in the game, so make sure you pick these rewards wisely. Now, I kept playing through Act 2, taking down the enemies and learning the Ironclad playstyle, smashing through the encounters until I met the boss of this second stage. This one was called the Champ. This guy I think may have been one of the tougher bosses for a first playthrough, because he had quite a high health bar, but had a pretty decent setup and quite a good grasp of things by now, so I thought I had the fight in the bag. However, as luck would have it, the game reminded me very quickly that sometimes if the cards don't come out in the order you want, then you can take an absolute beating. And this time I managed to just about be defeated when the boss had only 2 HP left. Things weren't all bad, and I managed to unlock a new character called the Silent. This class, and as I would learn later in fact, all classes play very differently to each other. Silent was much more like a rogue, relying on poison, quick attacks and damage over time effects to destroy his foes. Even though I felt this character may be stronger than Ironclad in certain ways, because I seemed to be flying through the next encounters. This time I only made it through to Act 2 and was beaten about 3/4 of the way through by an elite. Some of the enemies in this game are absolutely unrelenting, and if you don't learn how to beat them or the mechanics involved, they will definitely punish you. Again, I'd done enough to unlock the third character, and this one was called the Defect class. It was very late by this time, and I originally had only planned to play this game for a few minutes, and instead I'd found that I'd sunk probably over 2.5 hours into it. The game itself is very addictive. It definitely has that just one more run aspect going for it. Now the next day I tried the new class and it was again a complete overhaul in playstyle. This time it looked like you were trying to build orbs up around your character to do damage at the end of the turn and hit enemies with some crazy elemental damage overall. I must admit I couldn't quite get the hang of this character straight away and instead opted to go back to my favourite boy, that of the Ironclad. This time I managed to get all the way through Act 1 and 2 and then finally onto the third and final act, which was the Beyond. I had some really good cards this time and smashed my way through the act all the way up until the boss. This one was a bit of an odd one, a donut and decker, looked like a donut and some kind of prism, but this time they didn't seem quite as tough as some of the other enemies or bosses I'd faced before, and I managed to finally take them out with some well-timed legendary cards, a couple of potions, building up my strength, then hitting them with everything I had. I thought that this was the end, but instead I was taken to a room where you face off against the Heart of the Spire. Now depending on how strong your character is, this one is more of an automated battle. It will generate how much damage you can inflict on it and determine whether you were strong enough to defeat it. Suffice to say, I was lacking and swiftly took a dirt nap again, but luckily it's still classed as somewhat of a victory. I managed to grab some tasty unlocks in the process, as well as the final character, the Watcher. Now since then I've played Slay The Spire quite a few more times, and honestly it's a game that you can quite easily play for days, weeks or even years if you felt like it. And judging from the Steam player charts, even there, roughly 4 years later, the game seems to be in good order with quite a nice little player base, which is quite impressive when you work out just how compact the game is, yet it still manages to find a way to be fun and nowhere near as repetitive as you would imagine. A few things that definitely help with the game's longevity: as you start to progress and you unlock more within the game, eventually as well as the standard mode, you'll also have the daily climb and the custom games. With these you'll be able to add different modifiers on and completely enhance your gameplay, make the game as difficult or as easy as you'd like, or with the daily climb you'll have a set challenge with a specific character and certain modifiers and also a leaderboard, allowing you to see how you match up against some of the best players online. Finally, the standard game as well is also enhanced, because once you complete the game with a certain character, you'll then unlock its Ascension mode. Every time you beat all 3 acts and complete an Ascension, it's going to allow you to tackle the next one with even tougher modifiers on it. So as you progress, you're definitely going to have your work cut out for you. Now overall this game may not be for everyone, but honestly if you like anything like these types of games, RPG, card games, or of course roguelikes, this covers a lot of that with a bit of D&D thrown in the mix, so I'd say it's definitely worth your time checking out. As always, there'll be a lot more content from me. For All Things Gaming, take care. I'll see you on the next day.